Hello. Welcome to your OPEX Method, Inside the OPEX Method, Week 3 recap. We appreciate anyone who is joining us live. As always, if you have questions, please drop them along in the comments anywhere that you are consuming this live stream, and we will see them. So it's Week 3. We have covered a lot of ground already inside the OPEX Method Mentorship. Week 1, we focused a lot on coach-client relationships and how to establish a really strong start to that. Week 2, we focused a lot on assessment. And we are now in Week 3, which we have entered the series of weeks that we are focusing on program design. We focused mostly this week on resistance training, OPEX gain. And it was a lot of fun. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it was good. We kicked off Tuesday, and I like prefaced it with this. I'm like, guys, like we got to stay pretty macro from like a lecture standpoint, knowing that questions would bring us into the micro. So you and I just got off of the office hours on Friday. Today is Friday. Got off of the Friday office hours, and it got really micro. But no, it was really good. I mean, yeah, resistance training it's a big topic. And you know what I said this morning, I'm like, guys, we could spend 10 weeks talking about just this topic. But we hit the heavier principles, and when you hit those, it a lot of the time sparks a lot of questions and thoughts, and self-assessment and how you're prescribing resistance training for your clients, how maybe you're doing resistance training on your own. And then it was a good week. Can't believe it's already done.
Yeah, I'm going to just give an overview of the types of things you covered in Tuesday lecture. We went over key mechanisms for resistance training, focused a lot on motor control, touched on some hypertrophy. We talked about training age progressions. We talked about the contraction continuum, the strength continuum, and then we really got into the core principles behind writing resistance training programs. And then in lab on Thursday in the breakouts with the assistant instructors, the groups actually had a client avatar and went through co-writing programs and sharing their thoughts on the program design process. So what's your favorite part about teaching kind of this section of the course?
My favorite part is definitely the de-stressing part of program design. And this has to do with all of program design, but specifically resistance training. Just talking about and having the conversation on how do we, because I went through all of the mechanisms, right? We went through, so by mechanisms, it's you do A and then B happens. So we went through the mechanisms, like you mentioned, motor control or motor learning, hypertrophy, increasing strength, and a bunch more. But it all came down to those mechanisms are the end state of what you're trying to accomplish in resistance training. But how we really simplify it is we just need to understand that resistance training is just a stressor that we're going through, right? So when we lay it out in that way, it's we're trying to get to this mechanism. We have resistance training, which is the stressor. And then there's recovery that happens after the stress is induced. And then there's an adaptation that occurs, but only after the recovery. So if we just look at it that way, stress, recover, adapt, and then overarching, we have the mechanism in which we're trying to get to. So the stress is going to be informed. So we will call that sets and reps and tempo and all that stuff. What's going to inform that is going to be the mechanism. What are we trying to do? So we go through that process, right? It's a hypothesis of here's the stressor. We're going to go X amount of weeks where we're stressing and we're recovering and we're adapting. And then we're going to assess throughout the program. And then at the end of the program, of course, did we actually hit the mechanism or what the goal is in that resistance training program? That was too many words to try to simplify that. But I think if we just simplify resistance training in those three areas, there's a lot of de-stressing that comes along with that, because it's actually pretty dang simple, right? There's principles, but the thing that's not as simple is the individual considerations, right? I've said it probably 15 times, the N equals 1 thing, but it's every new person you work with is a brand new N equals 1. So, this stressor may have worked for the last person you worked with to get to that mechanism, but you may have to change that stressor up a little bit to get that person there. But if we stay close to those principles, we're more likely to reach that with that individual.
Absolutely. I was going to go there next. Obviously, it's the OPEX method. So we're focusing on individual design, and that's the most critical piece. Today in office hours and in lab, this came up a lot as well. But the importance of connection to the design, or connecting the client to the design, the why behind the design. So I'm sure you want to share some thoughts on that.
Yeah. You just heard me say this, so I apologize that I'm saying the exact same thing that I just said in office hours. But yeah, that's so important. But like what I said today was, guys, we shouldn't strive to be the all-time best program designers in the world. We should strive to be the best connectors of that program design to the person in which we're working with. Because if that program design is close enough, that person is going to see some great results. But a lot of people don't see great results. And I get it. Like there's like the 1%ers that really need to have a refined program design. But most people don't see great results because they don't put in the work and they don't do it and they're not consistent. So what I tried to convey today was like, just make compliance and connection your North Star, and some really good things will happen if you check the box on that. Because you can write a perfect program design, and if someone is 50% compliant to that perfect program design, you're not going to see perfect results. So yeah, that was kind of my point today on the connection piece. I think that's so important. And sometimes as coaches, and I've definitely been in this camp, but sometimes as coaches, we're just so focused on the A, B's, and C's and writing the perfect program design that we forget about the art of this thing, where it's like in the connection. I would place that in the art and not the science of program design.
Yeah, I know this is a tough week because there's so much covered. But for those who are not in the mentorship currently, maybe considering it, but potentially following along with us during these lives week over week, is there one like action item that we can give them to take, this week as they go into designing and trying to think about how they better connect their clients to their designs? Just one piece of advice we could give them to change or to think about differently this week?
Yeah, maybe I'll give two. Number one would be what we just talked about: work really hard to connect and to increase your overall compliance rates. So make sure you're tracking compliance rates with your clients. So work hard to do that. And then number two, we talked about this today as well, is under program for your people, especially when you first start working with them. Give them something that you absolutely know they're capable of doing, so that can build some early wins. And then what we talked about today is those initial program designs are essentially an extension of that initial assessment. So you're still assessing in those initial program designs to really understand what is good program design for this individual that I'm working with. So that would be two. Number one is connection, and number two is simplify and under program from a capability standpoint.
Awesome. Was there any moment for you, specific question, specific like coach aha moment this week that stood out that's worth sharing?
Give me 10 seconds. Yeah, something that Tyler said today I thought was really good. It was a good reminder. And again, I'm just like repeating what I just said, but I think that was not necessarily an aha moment for him, but it was in the past when he first heard that from us. And it's that under programming concept, and to not put so much pressure on yourself for that very first program design to be perfect, because you have time. Be patient. And usually when we talk about that transition to design process, that's something that I've always said. It's like really, really treat that as an opportunity to get to know your client. And again, if we go through that framework of stress, recover, and adapt, understand over those first few weeks what are appropriate stressors for them, what are they able to recover from, and are they fast adapters, slow adapters, or normal adapters? And that'll influence kind of your design process there.
Yep. I know I also mentioned this on office hours just because it's such inherently part of the OPEX brand DNA. But when we think about longevity as kind of potentially our bias, right, when it comes to helping coaches communicate goals with their clients, anything that you want to share there?
Yeah, again, and again, Candace, sorry, we talked about this on the call a few minutes ago, but I think it's really this goes back to week one and like just understanding your client, understand what to do with longevity might be important to that person. I think that's important because I think like this like longevity and health span conversation, I think it's a good one, but it's so global and it doesn't actually connect with many people. Like most people, when they hear the term longevity, they probably think like, oh, cool, like it's probably better to live longer. But I don't think people are like emotionally connected to that, right?
Oh,
So
to clarify though, I didn't mean necessarily longevity as in like the fitness culture trend. I meant more like our perspective on just keeping people moving for the long game.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next, right? So we have to connect that idea to people, right? We have to teach them what that means, but and even in teaching them what that means, we have to connect it in a way that it might still be important to them, right? So, you know, for you, right? It's like I would probably have a conversation around longevity as it connects to like your relationship with your husband, right? Because I'm sure you want to have like a really long and a really robust relationship with Charlie, and you want that to last as long as it can possibly last, right? So I probably connect it to that, right? With someone else, maybe it's I don't know, I won't even name anything, but maybe it's something else. But I think that we just have to really understand why longevity, uh, independent of whose definition is like better, why the concept of longevity and health span might connect really well to the individual that we're working with.
Absolutely. I love that. Maybe a sport would be a good example, like someone who just loves to play basketball and they want to still be able to like hit the court and shoot hoops when they're, in their late 50s and not be in pain.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it's like connecting it to hobbies, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Last week, we did not do an assistant instructor spotlight, but we have a lot of weeks and there aren't as many assistant instructors. So do you want to pick someone today to just introduce to the crowd?
Who did I hit week one?
You've hit Melissa.
I hit Melissa. Oh yeah, because she was like getting married, I think, right? So I was like, I had
Yeah.
to. Yeah. Yeah, I think you can speak to this one because you were in his breakout, but you shot me a message and you just told me how nurturing Anaki was, right? In that group. And we had talked about that before. We were talking about like assistant instructors' personalities and the differences between them. And I always introduce Anaki as like the relationships guy because he is just that. He's unbelievably nurturing. He's so good at building relationships with his clients and the coaches that work underneath him and the coaches that he teaches in the OPEX method as well. So I'll kick it over to you. What are your thoughts? I know that you said that about Anaki.
Oh, so much wisdom when it comes to the coach-client relationship. I think describing him as the relationships focused instructor is definitely that. You can tell, obviously, he's an OPEX gym owner. He manages a lot of coaches and then also mentors a lot of coaches, but he's just so caring. And I think that's his purpose. He definitely feels that's his purpose and loves just being able to connect deeply with another coach and help them, like the light bulbs go off for them. So I loved seeing that in his lab today or yesterday.
Yeah. And he has so much experience too, right? Like Anaki. So I don't know if you know this about Anaki, but he owned one of the most successful group gyms in Mexico. They had a massive CrossFit gym down there in Mexico City. And he transitioned to an individual design gym or an OPEX gym in 2016, 2017. And he's a great mind. He has a lot of experience in a lot of areas in fitness, and even his professional career prior to getting into coaching kind of set him up for that. But he's an absolute master when it comes to coaching coaches, and I think a lot of that is foundationally built on his ability to connect with people.
Absolutely. Well, I know next week we are continuing the programming design conversation. What do we have to look forward to in next week's lecture lab and office hours?
Yeah, so this week was OPEX gain. So we just talked about resistance training. Next week, we're going into OPEX sustain. So it's all aerobics. So we're going to talk about mechanisms of aerobic training, benefits of aerobic training, And then we're going to dive deep into what we call the MAP progression, or maximum aerobic power. So that's our like MAP 10 down to MAP 1 aerobic progression. So we'll talk about the entry point into that progression, who you should be actually progressing aerobic work with versus just giving movement to, the utility of aerobic progressions, the utility for someone to actually be able to understand and learn their gears and how that connects to things even outside of the gym, and then how to implement it with all clients. So we're going to dig into that. And then the labs, we're going to build a 4-week aerobic training progression with the assistance of the assistant instructors. And then Friday, we'll do what we did today, where we'll bring everyone back together and we'll just have some really good conversation around aerobic training.
I love it. What's your favorite OPEX-ism around aerobics?
My favorite OPEX-ism around aerobics. Gosh, it would probably just be, I'll point it back to, this is a James-ism, which
Same.
James is, but it's this, he's the first one that I've heard say like reward the pacer. So yeah, that's that. To me, when I hear that, I just think like, be patient. Right. So again, like there's a lot of utility in that in fitness, but who cares really? Right. Like I think there's more utility in life and just being patient and just pacing your life in a way that's very sustainable relative to what that means to you. So that's probably my favorite OPEX-ism, is rewarding the pacer.
Same. Well, cool. I know you have to get to football practice or be in dad mode for a little bit, so I'll let you bounce, but I appreciate you just taking the time to chat with me and give those who are following along a little bit more info about what we did this week. And we do, just quick reminder, the next cohort will be starting in January. And I know that feels like we have some time, but it's really coming up quick. October's over. We're rolling into the holidays. And before you know it, it's going to be time to start 2026. If people are interested, enrollment's not technically open, but we are allowing people to jump in and start digital curriculum early. And I think there are some really powerful benefits to doing that, because you can come into the actual mentorship 10 weeks ready to rock. So that's exciting. But I will let you, if you have any last words, go for it. If not, I'll let you bounce.
Nope. Anyone that is watching this live or anyone that watches the recording, we just appreciate you guys watching. Ask any questions. We love answering those things. And if you're not already in the method, look forward to seeing you in January.
Awesome. Thanks, Carl.
All right. See you guys.